Bub Carrington is the youngest bucket getter in the 2024 NBA Draft. This is Floor and Ceiling. Let's break him down. Bub Carrington will not turn 19 until a month after the draft, but he was already one of the most productive and intriguing college freshmen. In his only season at Pittsburgh, Carrington averaged about 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in 33 minutes per game. The pitch on Bub is all about how self-sufficient he is at his age, with strong positional size, a skill set that leads to plenty of pull-up shooting, even though I have questions over Carrington's overall scoring, as we'll get into, and then flashes of playmaking and defense, although with some important limitations to address. Right now, Carrington's bread and butter is the mid-range. As a freshman, he took 116 jumpers off the dribble from 2, making an impressive 51%. That's really high volume for an 18-year-old college freshman, but it's tough to argue that Carrington didn't deserve having so many looks given his efficiency. I'll keep diving into this later, but it's worth keeping in mind while watching all of this that Bub is much more comfortable shooting off the bounce than he is off the catch. What I really like about Carrington's scoring is how simple he can keep it while he gets to his spots and rises up using his size. One thing Bub does a lot is snaking screens, so he'll go one way off a pick, and then while shielding the ball from his defender, he'll return towards the original side into his elbow pull-up. Really, it's the elbows which should be considered Carrington's main spot. Most of the time, he'll probably use a screen in some capacity to get there. Given the Panthers guard's level of skill, touch, and his size at a little bit under 6'5" in shoes with a 6'8" wingspan, it's honestly tough to contest Carrington's shot. Plus, at least in college, and I really do expect this to be the case going forward, Bub took a lot of shots, so defenders constantly had to work against him. Everything I just mentioned also allows Carrington to make some tougher looks. But to give him credit, I don't think he's a prospect who thrives on taking impossible shots. We've previously covered guys like Cam Thomas or Rob Dillingham, but I don't think Bub is the same archetype. It also stood out to me at his age how comfortable Carrington was using screens. He doesn't mind resetting to get a better look or angle, and although his shot selection can still be improvable, he does have the means to bring the ball up and quickly create a good pull-up. Carrington's shooting ability plays out in a very interesting way from the three-point line. First, sticking to what we've been discussing, Carrington took a ton of threes overall and a ton of threes off the dribble. Often with college freshmen, and in particular with very young prospects, I value shot diversity, volume, and creativity more than the actual percentage. All of that bodes well for Bub, who converted 32% of his 134 threes off the dribble. Carrington is dangerous in ISOs, for example, but he's equally capable of grabbing a miss and bringing the ball up into a triple. In the NBA, it's easy for me to imagine how Bub should be able to call for a pick, and then once he gets a big on a switch, get his jumper off. One thing I'll note is that it doesn't seem like the Pitt prospect has very deep range to me, which might be a little nitpicky. However, for all intents and purposes, I think it's fine. I also like how Bub can shoot quickly out of screens, that includes rejections, or out of handoffs and dribble handoffs as well. Carrington has real craft and dexterity shooting off the dribble, and it's to an extent that really isn't normal for prospects at his age. However, he also doesn't take two types of easy shots, and that starts with spot-ups. To give you an idea, Carrington took 134 threes off the dribble, but only 75 catch-and-shoot looks. As for makes, he only converted 24 of those stationary threes, which is incredibly low. Like I said, Carrington took a ton of threes in different ways, which I do value. However, this versatility came almost entirely on the ball. I'm not sure what value Bub adds if he doesn't have the rock in his hands, which evidently limits the number of contexts that he can thrive in. This also means that Carrington's shot diet is extremely skewed, and I'm not sure how translatable it truly is going forward. As a freshman, about 3/4 of his jumpers were off the dribble, which is a ton of self-creation. I think that will be his bread and butter, like I said, but that is too much. Broadly speaking, I also don't mind Carrington's shot selection, but I don't love it either. I'm not a huge fan of ISO dribble-heavy players unless they're absolutely exceptional, and I have too many doubts about Bub to project him getting to that level for me to be truly super high on him. NBA teams value on-ball heavy guards to varying degrees, more so if they have no off-ball versatility, which is something that I truly value. So that again makes Bub's success more contextual, and it keeps him around the late teens, early 20s on my big board. The other type of easy shot that Carrington is averse to is anything really that comes straight at the basket. This, maybe more than anything, is what makes the Pitt prospect fairly volatile. Bub scored a lot this season, but barely any of it was at the rim. The read on this is straightforward for me, which is that Bub lacks the necessary strength. This was an issue in college already, and it will be a bigger one in the NBA. Carrington is a slender 195 pounds, as well as a pretty young 18-year-old in terms of physical development. Less than 15% of his total shots came at the basket, and he only made 29 of his total attempted 55 layups, which again is really low. Bub can't get to his spots in the half court, and honestly, fairly often, he can't even do so in transition. That's how many prospects in need of strength gains offset that limitation, but it's honestly glaring how often Carrington looks away from the rim or he's hesitant to attack the paint, especially if it's crowded. Quite often, Carrington can't even get paint touches, let alone deep ones. It's tough to look back and find many prospects who were truly successful in the NBA while staying away from the basket so much in college. There are a few special exceptions, but this might be Carrington's swing skill. Watching tape, we can only read so much into Carrington's makes at the basket since they were so few and far between. However, I think the most important takeaway for me is that he can use screens, he can handle the ball to some extent, and he is a creative shot maker. All of this leads me to believe that there's clear potential here as long as the body and the physicality gets up to scratch, which is no easy task. That's without mentioning that strength gains can sometimes be linked to shooting, ball handling, or athletic tweaks, so it's really tough to project Carrington at the basket. That said, I do think there's a clear path for improvement. However, just because it is clear, it doesn't mean that it's easily achievable. It can't be understated how crucial it will be for Carrington to get to his spots in the half court. That way, he'll force defenses to shift on his drives, and he'll also become way more productive at the rim because right now, he is nowhere near that. Going away from Bub's scoring and getting into his passing, I feel good, but not great. The numbers, however, are probably a little closer to that description. Carrington averaged a little more than 4 assists to slightly less than 2 turnovers while handling the ball and playing in the pick and roll quite often. My biggest conclusion is that at least to an extent, Carrington knows how to deal with 2 defenders on the ball, and he understands more or less when to release it. I don't really think that Bub does anything that complex as a pick and roll facilitator, but his production, consistency, and security right now are definitely commendable. Some of the same principles that we see with Carrington's shot making show up with his playmaking. He can pass out of a screen and out of a handoff or a DHO, and he's also comfortable snaking pick and rolls and using that to create advantages. As I said, Carrington's passes are not that dynamic. I feel like most of his passes come over the top, but he is using his positional size well in that respect. I'll admit though, I do find him a bit one-dimensional. A big part of that is because Bub's passing angles are limited since his access to the paint is also limited. However, he's very young. He ended his freshman year with a positive assist-to-turnover ratio, and clearly he has a very real base for facilitating out of ball screens. Plus, as Carrington gets stronger and he also improves his handle and craft, it's fair to assume that he'll get better. That said, I buy Bub as more of a shot-making guard rather than a playmaking guard, both now and in the big picture, but still, I like his playmaking flashes. We've been seeing how Carrington can pass out of screens, both to the roller, usually over the top, and also running some pick and pop. Bub shows flashes of getting into the paint and then zipping or skipping the ball to the opposite side, but I'm not sure that these are very clean looks. Yet again, Carrington really struggles to live in the paint and he's constantly getting bumped off his spots. That can sometimes be countered if he's coming off some sort of pin down or curl action, but even then, Bub barely gets to the basket. So like I said, this is a huge swing skill for him, not just with his scoring, but it's also highly important for his passing. There's a few adjustments I'm looking for going forward. The first one is that Carrington can still lack intention in the pick and roll, which was not a big issue in college, but it's more of a ball stopping concern in the faster NBA world. Bub can take lots of dribbles without creating an advantage or generating a good look. I feel like Carrington broadly knows which spots he wants to get to, but genuinely he just can't force his way there because of his physical limitations. I also think that the Panthers prospect is a better athlete than he's given credit for. Bub doesn't play with explosion or force, but I think he has a decent first step and body control that should theoretically improve. However, that's not going to happen until he gets stronger. Carrington struggles under pressure, he can get rushed in the paint, and I just don't find his passing all that versatile, even if it is productive. Bub Carrington's defensive outlook is simple. The effort is there, especially on the ball, but the production wasn't really there, and there are also very valid physical concerns for his NBA projection. To get the numbers out of the way, they were not good. In 33 games, Carrington totaled 19 steals and 8 blocks. However, just looking at those kind of undersells the Panthers prospect's freshman season on defense in my eyes. I thought Carrington really competed on the ball and he put in real shifts on this end. Carrington is a bucket-getting guard type, but again, going back to Cam Thomas or Rob Dillingham, I think his defensive approach and his potential looks much better. I'm not sure that Bub will be very switchy. I think he'll start his career on twos and he'll only defend guards rather than wings long term, but he has nice positional height and length to go along with his motor, so I feel kinda optimistic. To give you an idea, Carrington measures similarly to Bruce Brown or Ben McLemore. Like I said though, the athletic limitations are a big factor. Predictably, strength is a huge issue on this end as well, because Carrington still gets moved around easily despite trying hard. NBA strength is even more imposing, so Bub, at least early on, is really going to struggle to keep up from that perspective even against smaller guards. Really, Bub's defensive outcome is very reliant on his physical development. That's the case for his offense as well, but it's even more amplified here in my opinion. I think there's defensive potential, only so much, but I see Carrington as a similar prospect to someone like Nickeil Alexander-Walker who really developed on this end, so we could be surprised. Again though, I think strength is the biggest takeaway. Bub Carrington's pitch is easy. He's a 6'5", 18-year-old who can create his own shot from the mid-range and from 3 while showing comfort in ball screens and trying on defense. However, Bub really needs to get stronger on both ends in an absolutely crucial way, and my other big thing is that he needs to become more versatile, particularly as a passer, but also very much off the ball. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think about Bub Carrington, and if you enjoy the channel, if you want to watch more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.